Welcome back to the Chicago Boss Screencast. This is episode 2. You might recall from last week, we had a pretty productive day. We downloaded the latest Chicago Boss source. We untarred it. We CD'd right into it. We typed make. We built that sucker. We started up the dev server, and then we even made a sample template file. It looked like this. These are my books. Now, if you recall, these don't come from a database. These are just hard-coded into the template, and that's what we're going to fix this week. We're going to make a data model. We're going to talk to the database, and we're going to have a controller query the database, pull out records, and send them to the templates, which will then render what we put in the database. So, enough of my gabbing. Let's get started. Let's start with that model file. All right. Now, in Chicago Boss, each type of record we want gets its own model file. It's just an Erlang module in the model directory. So in this case, I'm going to open up book.erl. It's going to be a module just called book. This is a special type of module. This is called a parameterized module, which is not a very well documented feature of Erlang, and a lot of purists hate it, but I think it's pretty useful. Chicago Boss makes extensive use of parameterized modules, and what we will do is just type in a list of attributes that we want our data model to have. The first attribute should always be ID, and just capital I, lowercase d, and that'll be the unique identifier for a particular record. And then the other ones are just whatever we want to store and display. In my case, I want author. I'm going to want the title of the book, and I'm going to want a year for it. Alright, so that's all I type. Then I'll add a little extra compile directive. We want to say export all. Now, even though I'm not typing any functions here, the compiler, it's a special compiler that generates a lot of code and injects it after the stuff that's in the model file. So we need to say export all, otherwise those won't be exposed. Now, I'm just going to close this out. I have defined a book model file. I don't need to do any database schemas or anything, because right now we're using an in-memory database. Chicago Boss has another number of other options. You can use Tokyo Tyrant, which is schemaless, so you don't need to do anything besides what I just did. If you're going to use PostgreSQL, Amnesia, or MySQL, you need to set up a schema on your own time. And in the case of the SQL databases, you will make a table that is the plural of the data model. So, if I was using Postgres, I'd have a table called books, and then each book record would be stored in there. So, just do the pluralization thing, kind of like Rails. It's a feature I always liked. All right, anyhow, enough of that. We don't need to make any tables. We're just rocking and rolling. Now, as soon as we've made a model file, we got something kind of cool that we can do. We can go back to our test server, and we can go to localhost/doc/book, which is just the name of the model, and it has generated documentation for us. Abstract module book, and this is the list of attributes that we put in there: author, title, and year. We didn't have to compile anything. It just automatically opened it up and did it. And here are the generated function names. So we've got we can get a whole list of attributes here. We can just access the author. We can set the author. In this case, since Erlang is an assign once language, it'll just return a new boss record, it's called, or a new book that has the new author name. These aren't objects, so that's just how it works. Get and set the ID, get and set the title. There's also the save function, which will come in handy later. It'll actually record whatever we have in this parameterized module, in this boss record, as it's called in the lingo, to the database. And here's year, which we can also get and set. Anyway, whenever we change the model definition, this page will automatically be updated. So /doc is one of the most useful features of the Chicago Boss framework. We'll revisit it many times, I'm sure. In the meantime, well, just defining a model isn't very interesting. What we want to do is we need some controller code to get stuff from the database and throw it into the views. So the next thing I'm going to do is open up controller and make a new controller called bookcontroller.url. Alright? Now this is just a module called bookcontroller. It's also a parameterized module. It has one parameter though. All controllers have one parameter. It's called rec, R-E-Q. It's the request object, which will have a lot of useful information about post parameters, get parameters, the remote IP address, and stuff like that. Again, we'll say compile export all. And we define a function for each template file that we have. So the template that we defined before was called list, which would just list all the books in the database. And each of these will take 2 or 3 arguments. The first 2 arguments, or the first argument is the HTTP method that was used. In this case, it's it's a GET request. And then the second is a list of tokens that appear after the base URL. So if the base URL is /book/list, then the token list is empty. But if it's /book/list/all, then this would look like you put an all there. That'd be the token list. In any event, we'll just have these 2. There's a third parameter that'll show up sometimes in our controller functions, but that's just used when we have when we have some kind of authentication. The authentication information will be passed in the third argument, but we're not going to deal with that right now. Now, we've got a function we're starting to define for list. We want a list of books, so all we'll say is books equals bossdb find. First parameter is the type of model we're going to look for, the boss record we're going to look for. It's a book. And the search criteria. Here we're just going to have an empty list. And that's it. That's enough to get us started. And then we want to return OK with a list of variables. So this just finds all the books, and then it's going to fire them off to the template. That's all the code we really need for now. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to animate the book list view. So before I had fake data. Now I'm going to turn this into a real live Django template. So the variable we pass in is called books, so we can do a for loop over it. Let's say book.author, book.title, and book.year. Alright. And we can close this down. Now we can go back to our book list. So it's back here, book list, and refresh. And it's empty. That's because our database is empty. So we don't really know if our code's working yet. Now, instead of making like an admin interface and having to deal with a form, we can kind of cheat. We can go to a special address called /admin and click on book. We can click on new book, and we can actually add stuff to the database directly from this admin interface. We got author, we can specify the title, we can specify the year. Makes it very easy to do that. So start out, we can have our buddy Stephen King again, and now we'll have, I don't know, let's do The Shining. I don't know when that was written either. I've never actually read Stephen King books. I don't know why I'm obsessed with them right now. Anyhow, create book, bam, this is a record we're displaying from the database. So this is still the admin interface. If we want to go back to the interface that we made, we just go to /book/list, and there it is, Stephen King and The Shining. Unfortunately, we are out of time once again, but next time we'll get into more advanced database queries and, see where the yellow brick road takes us.